Right then, blokes, so today you're going to learn a new circuit.
Yes.
How do you go about learning a new circuit?
Yeah, we're at Almira, but this weekend, well, for 9 days, bike promotions are here. We've got it for 3 days, and at Almeria, you've got Almeria, the circuit here, and then just the other side of the paddock, you've got Andalusia. And then there's a link road between the two circuits, which they call a Circuit of Spain, I think.
España.
España. So I think the idea is I'm going to learn Andalusia today, and then tomorrow have a go round Almira, and then after lunch apparently they're turning it into the big circuit, so you can do the whole thing. So the idea is to do 3 circuits in one.
So then, Mike, tell me, how do you go about learning a brand new track?
Well, everybody has their way of doing it. I'm quite lucky in the sense that I pick up track quite quickly. However, what I tend to try and do is if I've got a circuit plan, I've got a rough idea of what's coming up. But I'll go out and do maybe 2-3 laps maximum at a steady pace, just to get the idea of what's coming up next, left, right, over rises, that sort of thing. And from then on, I go as hard as I can, basically, and really accelerate hard and brake hard. The one worry I always have if you bumble around for too long is you start to create reference points, which, because you're dribbling up to the corners and you're not braking that hard, are absolutely useless. So the faster you can start getting a reference point which means something, like you're never going to arrive at a corner with only a tiny bit of brake. You're usually arriving with a lot of brake. So get to that point quickly. So I tend to sort of 2-3 laps steady, and then basically pull the pin. Of course, you're going to make loads of mistakes, so I tend to start braking hard but early, and then just adjust the point up. But get to the big throttle and get to the big brakes fairly quickly. That's what I do. I'm not suggesting that's what everybody should do, but that's my advice. We were at Almira for 3 days, and I didn't want to base myself up in the Andalusia pit, only to have to rebase myself back in the Almeria pit. So it's only such a short ride. I decided to set up in the Almira pit and then just ride up there. It literally takes about 1 to 2 minutes maximum. First time I went up there, of course, I got it horribly wrong, didn't know where I was going. Tony from Track Sense put me right though. He was up there with some of his clients and told us which way to go, etc.
We have a one-way system, so you want to go on this circuit? Okay, that end of the paddock, that end of the boxes. Okay. So, and when you come back this way. Okay,
It's a Marshall controlled entry onto the circuit. Because there's no real start-finish area and there's a left-hander just before the corner you're about to go out onto, there's very poor vision, so really they just let a marshal guide you out onto track, a bit like they do at Cadwell. Obviously this was the very first lap out on the circuit. I'd looked on the circuit plan. Of course it means absolutely 0 when you first roll out onto the track itself. It's not a terribly accurate plan anyway, and what it doesn't of course show is the undulations, which make lots of the sections of the circuit blind on the approach. So one of the first things to do is try to find something in the distance often that you can aim towards, like an aim point, before you go over the rise. Then work out from the rise how far it is roughly to where you need to do something, either turn, stop or whatever. Even when I'm learning a track, I don't particularly like to follow people, because you very often just replicate the mistakes they make. I mean, if they know where they're going, it's fine and you can sort of hang on to them for a while. And certainly when you're directly behind somebody, slipstreaming, it really is quite dangerous. So I would recommend never to slipstream on a circuit anyway, because you lose vision of what's in front of you, lose sight of marshals and that sort of thing. Plus, if anything goes wrong with the bike, you can just sort of easily dart out past them if you're not in the slipstream. This next corner is a typical example of what
often goes wrong. It's a long looping corner, I can see the riders in the distance, so I know where the track's roughly going. You come out of the left, you expect to be over to the right, coming out of the left. And of course then you go into a tight right and you're completely the wrong side of the track. So the problem gets worse and worse and worse the further up the track you go. Obviously getting the shape of the track in your mind is important on the early laps, but immediately start to try and build up references. Obvious ones are your braking reference, but that's a variable thing when you're learning the circuit anyway. Then you get a tip in an apex. And what also helps is having a drift out point as well. It was fairly clear to me straight away the group of riders I went out with, we were all in the same boat, none of us knew where we were going. And the big problem there is because you're not sure what they're going to do, you have to cut people extra slack. You know, they sometimes move out and change position, and it can be a bit of a nightmare to get past people. So to a point you really have to commit. This next corner we're coming to, on the outlap, we were going so slow it felt like a really fast corner. So I went in considerably faster, but then got caught out because it was a little tighter than expected. But I knew over this rise there was probably 50 to 100 yards, so I kind of had a good opportunity to dart past that guy. This particular corner is very open, so you can see all the way around it, apex and right the way up the hill, so it's fairly easy to pick that one out. Andalusia has 3 layouts, and obviously there's going to be sections of the track marked off by cones, which can confuse you slightly because all of a sudden the track seems to open up and you're not quite sure which way to go. Once again, reference points are your key. Multiple apex corners evolve as the day goes by. They start off as corner, straight, corner, and they end up often as one long corner with 3 apexes. So you really need to figure out roughly where you need to be on the track, and then try and put some pace into it to make the track make sense then.
So then, bloke, what are your thoughts about Andalusia?
Well, my first thought so far is it's unbelievably difficult to learn. Really, really tricky. Loads of flying crests, rises, corners tightening up on themselves, double apexes. To be honest, it'd make a brilliant circuit to really push yourself. And you've got to trust the front an awful lot though. And some people like it, some people don't. So I'll give a better update later on. But difficult to learn. There's very few reference points. That's half of the problem. There's short curves right at the apexes, but very little in between. The rest of it's quite bland, so it's difficult to reference where you are sometimes.
However, a couple of sessions later I got my eye in and really started to turn the wick up. Then the circuit really came to me. It is a fantastic circuit, obviously extremely demanding. Bumpy in sections, humps and dips which can catch you out. Blind crests, really is difficult to learn, but very, very rewarding when you get it right. It's not a circuit I would call a point and squirt circuit where you get straight, turn, sit it up straight into the next turn. It's very much flowing, things run into each other, so you've got to get positioning right, get your line right, and more importantly trajectory out of corners, get the bike pointed in the right place before you get there. I'd heard lots of stories about it before I got there, but like when you meet someone for the first time, you shouldn't cloud your decision by what other people say. You get on with it and you might get on with them. Exactly the same with the circuit. Go there, see if you enjoy it. I know I did, and I'll definitely go back.